I'm Kathleen Wallace. I'm a professor of philosophy here at Hofstra, and I'm the chairperson of the philosophy department. And we're delighted to welcome you to Hofstra and are thrilled to be hosting both this training session as well as the Ethics Bowl itself in February. There are several of us here from the philosophy department who will be facilitating the training sessions today. So myself, we have Professors Terry Godlove and Amy Baer sitting there in the back, and a couple of other professors, Mark McAvoy and Christopher Elliott, will be here in a little bit. And then we also have some of our students, our philosophy majors, who will be helping out today, Kyle O'Dowd and Jake Friedenberg. So we're really looking forward to the training session in a little bit. And Roberta is going to have an introduction here that she wants to do, but before that, I just wanted to point out to you that there is, in case you are not aware of it, there is an Ethics Bowl website that Hofstra has created. There are the general information that there's the general information that you need about the Ethics Bowl. There's a campus map and all that sort of stuff. We also have, as you can see here, this works. There's a tab called Instructional Videos. It's still in progress. It should be up by next week, right, Colin? The beginning of next week. There will be 3 instructional videos here where we discuss 3 of the cases that are part of your current 2013-14 Regional High School Ethics Bowl cases, the Compensation for Nonprofits case, the Frankenberger case, and the Indian Child Welfare Act case. Short videos, not long, but just to give you some tips about how to think about approaching those cases. So, welcome to Hofstra. I hope you have a good and productive day today. We do have some literature out there about the philosophy department. If anybody's interested in philosophy, I hope you'll help yourself to that literature, and we look forward to interacting with you in a little bit. And now I think Roberta has a bunch of information for all of you, and I'm going to let Roberta take over.
Thanks so much, Kathleen, and thanks especially to Colin and Johanna for their wonderful help getting this event organized. And I know the Ethics Bowl will be in great hands because of their wonderful efforts. And thank you all for coming out on a Saturday morning. This is Pearl Harbor Day, and I know this isn't what you would normally be doing on a Saturday morning, but we're very glad to have you here. We're very grateful to Hofstra for hosting us. This event started out 5 years ago. Our first location was Bethpage High School, then Malloy College, and now we're very happy to be at Hofstra. So I just like the teams to identify themselves. Bethpage, where are you? Hi, and Farmingdale? Wow, big contingent. Jericho. Is Oceanside here yet? Hauppauge? Hauppauge, all right, great. Our Lady of Mercy. And Plain Edge. Here. Okay, Roslyn. And the Stony Brook School. And Westbury. We're happy to say there are 4 new schools joining us this year. For a total of 14 schools going to be participating in the Ethics Bowl. I'd also like to personally, before I begin, thank the coaches. You've put in an awful lot of time, your own time, to make this event happen, so I'd just like to have everyone give a round of applause for their dedication to making this happen. It really couldn't happen without all their hard work. So as I said, this is the 5th year of the Long Island High School Ethics Bowl. We're very proud to say, and some of you have participated before. If you have, raise your hand. Have you been in an Ethics Bowl before? Oh, a nice number of you. Very good. But many of you, as I said, will be participating for the first time. Your school may be here for the first time. But even if you have been here before, there are some changes this year in rules and procedures and such. So I'd like to go through them so you can understand what you'll be experiencing. Then I'll take some questions. Then I'd like to talk about the handout that you have a little bit. And then, as Dr. Wallace said, when you're done, we'll divide up into a couple of breakout sessions. And you'll review how to make an argument and some ethical theory. So to start with, the morning of February 1st, and I hereby authorize all of you to start praying now that the weather will be good on that day, no blizzards, nothing to obstruct us. You're going to arrive at the campus. The event will be held in a different building. You'll have breakfast, you'll be welcomed, and then you'll walk into a room where you'll be facing another team, a panel of 3 judges, and a moderator. You'll be asked to introduce yourselves. The judges and moderator will introduce themselves as well. Now, just one word about the judges. They're not philosophy majors, all of them. Some of them are, but the great majority of them aren't. They're teachers, librarians, doctors, lawyers, people who have an interest in ethics and philosophy. So you don't have to worry about needing to sound like you've taken a philosophy course. We know that many of you have not. In terms of what you'll be provided with, there will be scrap paper on the table. You can't bring any notes in with you, but you will have paper there that you can use to write notes to each other or notes to yourself. In terms of timers, you can bring in timers as long as you can't go on the internet with them. And the judges will have the same requirement. So you can bring a watch or whatever you like, but as long as you can't access the internet with it, and as long as you understand that the moderator will be the person who will be keeping official time. And you'll be able to ask the moderator to let you know when you have a minute or 2 minutes left in your presentation. So the moderator will read the first case that's been selected for that particular round, and then she'll pose a question. Now, I know you've worked with cases that have study questions. The question that will be asked the day of the Ethics Bowl will not be one of those questions necessarily. It may be similar to it, but the questions that you're going to be discussing on that day are not known in advance. So you just have to be prepared. They'll be related to the study questions, but they won't be the same one. So let's say that the first match is between Hauppauge and Westbury, and there's a coin toss, and Hauppauge wins, and they decide they want to present their case first. So they have a minute to consult, and then they give their presentation of the case for 5 minutes. Now, that may not sound like a lot of time, and we used to give more time for the presentation, but what we found is that the longer time wasn't necessarily put to good use. A lot of times people just repeated the arguments they made in the first 5 minutes. So we cut the interval down a little bit. You're going to have to talk fast, but not that fast. It should be enough time to give your interpretation of the case. We want you to really flesh out your argument in that time. I'm not going to go through the criteria right now because your coaches have the new score sheet and the judges' criteria page. So I'll just say briefly that your argument will be assessed in terms of how relevant it is, how clear it is, how logical it is, and whether you take into account other points of view. And I'm going to talk about that issue a little bit later. We're adding one suggestion this year. Before you launch into your argument, if you're the first team and you're making your presentation, we're asking you to let the judges know whether everyone on your team is going to be speaking or just one person is going to be making the case. We understand that teams work in different ways. Some teams have everybody study each case so that everybody can make a contribution in the presentation. Some teams like to work by dividing up the cases so that one student takes the first 3 and another student takes the next 3. So if your case is called, only one person would be speaking. That's perfectly fine. We don't want to penalize or reward teams for using one method or the other, but I think you can understand that a judge who's seeing a panel of 5 students, I think naturally would expect everyone would speak. So we want you just to let the judges know in advance, just in a few words. We will all be speaking during this presentation, or Tommy is going to present this case for our team, just so the judges know what to expect. I think that'll help clear up a lot of difficulties later on. So Hauppauge makes its wonderful 5-minute presentation of the case. That's the presentation section. Now we come to the commentary. This is a very important part of the Ethics Bowl, very significant to us. Westbury gets a minute to consult, and then they comment on what Hauppauge said, and they have 5 minutes for this. Now, by commenting, that doesn't mean that they present their interpretation of the case, how they prepared for it. Their job is to listen to what the first team said and comment on it, critique it. Did they do a good job? Were their arguments sound? Were their arguments clear? Do you have any questions that you'd like answered? Did they ignore something? Should they have added something? Did they not take into account another point of view? How good was their presentation? You don't have to agree or disagree. You can do either. You can agree with what they said and offer other reasons that you think to bolster their argument. But the point is that you're listening to what they said and responding to it. I hope that's very clear. Then Hop-Hog gets 1 minute to consult, and they have 3 minutes to reply to the critique that Westbury offered. Then we come to the judges' questions, and this is a really interesting part of the round, because each judge, we encourage each judge to ask a question, although, you know, that's up to their discretion. They get to ask a question related to the case, but they could go off case. They could ask you to extrapolate from the case to another situation. You really have no idea what they're going to ask you. And we give 10 minutes for this section because we think it's really important. You kind of go off your script here, and you have to take what you've learned and what you've internalized and apply it to other situations. All questions will be addressed to the team, not to an individual. If a judge makes a mistake and singles one person out, you can deflect it and say, my team will answer that, or the moderator will hopefully step in and say, all questions will go to the team. So after these 10 minutes are up, the judges have asked their questions. They will score, put down their score on the sheets, and then the first half of the round is over. The second half proceeds as the first, except the teams switch sides. The moderator reads the new question, the new case with the new question, and now Westbury is the presenting team. So they get to present their argument, their view of the case. Hop-Hog offers their commentary. Westbury responds. The judges ask their questions. The judges score the entire round. The winner is announced, and it's off to the next round. It's going to be a long day. We're lengthening the day from last year because this will be the second year that we're having a national high school ethics bowl. Last year was the first year, and 2 teams, I'm very happy to say 2 teams from our Long Island Bowl were invited down. Jericho and Farmingdale competed. The nationals are held at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. This year, because the field of teams is increasing from 16 to 20, I'm afraid only 1 team from Long Island, only the winners from each regional will be invited to go. But we wanted the event on Saturday to mimic the form that it's going to take at the Nationals, so the team that's representing us won't be at a disadvantage. So when you come on February 1st, we're going to have 3 rounds in the morning, then a lunch break, then 1 more open round, then the 4 top scoring teams will compete in a semifinal, then we'll have the final round, and then the awards ceremony. Now, I'll get to the awards in a second. I want to say a word about feedback from the judges. It's very natural after you've finished a round, especially if you haven't done as well as you hoped, but even if you won that round, to ask the judges, you know, what did we do wrong, or what should we do right? It's natural, but it puts everyone in a tricky situation. We had a very unfortunate situation one year where a team asked the judge, a team that lost a round asked a judge what they should do, and the judge gave them some information about how she thought they could do better. The team took that advice to the next round and lost, and they blamed the judge. So we're asking the judges, if asked for feedback, to give feedback only about the form of the presentation. In other words, speak louder, make more eye contact, speak slower, have a smile on your face, but not to comment on how you attack the questions, because that tends to just throw teams off their game plan, and we don't want any recriminations happening like we did that other year. So I hope you understand that situation. Now, in terms of prizes, the award ceremony, there's obviously going to be a winning team and a second place team. The 2 teams that made it to the semifinals will be awarded third place prizes. And we also have 2 honorary mention awards. One will go to the team, not in the top 4 teams, that scored the highest on the commentary section of the rounds. And that's one of the reasons we think that the commentary section is so important. The team that was able to offer the best critique to the presentation will get an honorary mention award, as will the team that scored highest in the answers to the judges' questioning section of the rounds. And finally, there's a new award that we're calling the Spirit of the Ethics Bowl Award. And I'd like to spend the next few minutes of my talk describing what that means. But before I do, let me ask you, do you have any questions about what I've covered so far? Any questions about the procedure, the judging, the rules, anything like that? I'll be happy to answer any questions. Anybody? It's all clear? No confusion? Okay. So the Spirit of the Ethics Bowl Award is given in honor of Dr. Robert Leidenson, a philosophy professor at the Illinois Institute of Technology, who about 20 years ago conceived of the Ethics Bowl as an in-classroom activity. And it was so popular that it soon became an event between his college and another college. And today there's something called the Intercollegiate Ethics Bowl, on which this event is based. And over 120 colleges participate in that. That event is now in its 18th year. And I'm hoping that maybe some of you, when you go to college, will join the Intercollegiate Ethics Bowl team, or maybe you'll try to create one at your school. There's also a 2-year college ethics bowl. So it's been a very successful movement, and to think that it all started in a college classroom is very inspiring to me. As I said, last year there were 16 teams in the National High School Ethics Bowl. This year there will be 20, so this is definitely growing. So what do we mean by the Spirit of the Ethics Bowl? It will go to the team, not previously awarded, that scored highest in the respectful dialogue category. That's a new category that we're adding to our score sheet this year. On the simplest level, engaging in respectful dialogue means mastering the art of disagreeing without being disagreeable, of learning how to maintain civility during a discussion with someone with whom you may completely disagree, of realizing that you don't have to put someone down in order to build yourself up, and of the ability to find points of agreement from which you can perhaps go on to disagree. There aren't many opportunities in society today or in school, unfortunately, to engage with material in the way that the Ethics Bowl is asking you to do. That is, to balance your desire to win with your desire to collaborate or cooperate. Look, we know this is a competitive event, and that's why it's one of the reasons it's so popular. Everyone likes contests. But at the same time, we're trying to balance that, as I hope you understand, with the inherent pleasure of just participating, the intrinsic value of participating in an event like this. To get the most from an ethics bowl, you need to concentrate on 3 qualities. To become a better listener, that's why we stress the commentary portion of the event, to become empathic, and to develop a better appreciation for complexity. We think this quality, being able to engage passionately but respectfully, is important. I think of it as a kind of anti-venom, an antidote against the poisonous atmosphere that permeates so much of our national conversation today. Many of you I know come from a debate culture, which is adversarial, as is so much of what happens in politics today. It's almost become a kind of blood sport. We award winning at any cost and seize on small rhetorical flourishes and pounce on errors. Our legal system is adversarial. There's a defendant and a plaintiff. Someone's guilty or not guilty. You win, I lose. I'm right, you're wrong. And there's also a mentality of, well, I know how to solve this problem. It's simple. You're either for something or against it. But many issues in the national conversation and in the ethics bowl are in fact dilemmas, and dilemmas by definition aren't simple. If they were, they wouldn't be dilemmas. The word itself comes from the Greek word, I just looked this up, meaning having 2 assumptions. The die of dilemmas is like in dialogue, it means 2, and a lemma, as all you math students know, is an assumption or a proposition. So a dilemma is a situation which has at least 2 sides and maybe more. And an ethical dilemma defies an easy solution. It's just not possible. Someone may win, but there's a cost. And the person who loses may actually gain something. They're complicated, in other words, by definition, and if you don't think they are, then you need to think about them a little more. Because let's face it, you don't need philosophy to tell you that stealing is wrong. Everyone knows that stealing is wrong. But maybe you need philosophy to tell you, or to ask the question, why shouldn't you steal? Or are there some cases in which stealing might be acceptable? And if so, which cases are those? Take the famous case of the man whose wife is deathly ill and decides he has to steal the medicine he can't afford to buy from the druggist who just won't hand over the medicine. If ever stealing can be rationalized, it's in a case like this. It's obvious the man wants to save his wife's life, and nothing's more important than that. But what about the druggist? What if his wife is ill too, and he needs the income from the drug so that he can save her? What if everyone decided that their own needs superseded the needs of others? What then? I heard an amazing case on the radio driving here this morning on NPR about a website where a man posted nude pictures of people that were hacked from people's computers. And the interviewer was, of course, appalled by this and shocked and was questioning him about it, how he got the pictures. And then the interviewer said to him, well, would you post a nude picture of your mother or your sister? And the guy with the website went, of course not. Why would I want to post a nude picture of my mother? And he couldn't make the connection that he was doing the same thing to other people. He put himself in a special case, in a bubble, so that, of course, he wouldn't post his own mother, but he would post someone else's mother or someone else's sister or girlfriend. And the interviewer, it was one of the few times I heard the interviewer was just so stunned, he didn't even know what to say. I mean, what do you say to someone who can't summon the basic empathy to put himself in someone else's shoes? So that's one of the things we really want you to do at the Ethics Bowl, is not just consider one position that comes naturally to you, but to be able to put yourself inside someone else's shoes and think of it from their point of view. This is an easy case to put yourself in someone else's shoes, but some of these cases may be a little harder. Just because there are arguments, though, on both sides of an issue doesn't mean that every argument is equally right or valid. We're not trying to promote relativism, that all answers or perspectives are equally valid. Some arguments are better than others. And what makes them better? Not merely repeating them or shouting them. The best arguments are the ones that are logical, clear, relevant, and based on sound assumptions. And these are the very criteria that your arguments are going to be judged on during the Ethics Bowl. And that's what we're going to be focusing on in the breakout sessions. But we're also not asking you to be wishy-washy, to water down your arguments to make them appeal to most people. We are asking you, though, to put yourself in the shoes of someone who might take another approach or even an opposite opinion. It's easy enough to identify with the man whose wife will die if she doesn't get the medicine. But again, how would it feel to be the pharmacist? Or how would it feel to be the person who created the drug? Isn't he entitled to some kind of compensation for his labors? What if you made something and were asked to give it away by a desperate person? Considering other points of view is another important category on which your arguments will be evaluated. We want you to think with your heart as well as with your head, so that empathy, the ability to feel what others may be feeling, is a crucial component of the bowl. So to recap, what you need to do at the Ethics Bowl to do well is to be able to construct sound, clear, relevant arguments, to consider other points of view, and show that you appreciate complexity. What you don't need to succeed is to use philosophical terminology. Remember, ethical theory didn't come first. John Stuart Mill didn't wake up one day and said, I'm going to define utilitarianism. Rather, for years, many people thought about situations in which one person's right conflicted with the rights of a group, and a consensus emerged that maybe the best course of action would be to do what's best for the greatest number of people. And that approach became known as utilitarianism. So Mill codified it, named it, he didn't invent it. You don't have to know the term to use that argument. So don't worry about knowing the philosophical terminology. You just have to construct your arguments. So to wrap up, I'd like to say two things that I always say at the start of an ethics bowl. First, I think most of you realize that most of the time you spend in school, you're taught to answer questions. And what we'd like you to do here is to question answers. And the second thing is that if you leave the bowl feeling that you know just a little bit less than you did when you came in, that's a good sign. That means that you've had a successful day. That's what we mean by intellectual humility, and that's what your handout is about. It's the acknowledgement that no one has all the answers, no one has complete knowledge, that the point is to stay open to considering new ideas and open to realizing that we can all have a part of the answer, and if we work together, we can put the answer together in full. I'd also like to use a wonderful analogy that one of my colleagues, Dr. Wendy Churjohn, came up with. In an ethics bowl, I don't want you to think of yourself as lawyers arguing a case. That's more for debate. Think of yourselves as doctors treating a sick patient. You each have your own specialty and expertise, but you're working together to get the right diagnosis to save the patient's life. By being in an ethics bowl, you're joining a conversation that's thousands of years old. Even before Socrates gathered his disciples in the agora, in the marketplace, men, women, and children looked around them and wondered. They asked open-ended questions, considered each other's answers, and asked more questions. Plato famously said that philosophy begins in wonder, not in solutions or answers, but in wonder. So even though I was an English major and I consider myself a guest in philosophy, I know now that philosophy is more than a discipline. It's an ongoing conversation. Right now, people are talking and writing to each other about issues that you'll be considering in the ethics bowl and in the breakout sessions, and you'll be joining in that conversation. It's taking place somewhere in the ether, in the same invisible space that electricity exists, or the internet. We can't see it or touch it, but you can access it. You can plug into the conversation. Now, none of us here can join it on the same level as Plato or Socrates, and we can't even join it on the same level as the professors who will be leading the breakout sessions. But that's okay, because when you see kids playing basketball on the playground, they're not that great either. They're not ready to compete in the NBA, but they're playing basketball. They're playing the game. It's all the same game. And no one can deny that if you're in the ethics bowl, you're doing philosophy. We like to use the word doing when we talk about philosophy, because while it isn't a blood sport, it is active. It's something you participate in with both feet, with your heart and with your head. It's active, it's ongoing, it's part of the conversation. And we're asking you to keep it going. Keep wondering, keep asking questions. Thank you very much for your attention. I'd also like to add, which I forgot to do at the beginning, that this event, in addition to being sponsored by Hofstra, is sponsored by the foundation that it's my honor to represent, the Squier Family Foundation. We've been in existence for almost 8 years, and we're trying to get philosophy into elementary, middle, and high schools. We have several other initiatives besides the Ethics Bowl, but this is one of our main ones. If you have friends at other schools who you think would be interested in participating in future Ethics Bowls, you're all deputized to bring the word of the bowl to them. We'd love to get a larger participation, and we hope to start a New York City Bowl next year. There will be 2 or 3 teams from New York City who'll be at the Long Island Bowl with you. They weren't able to come this morning, but they're there in the hope that next year we'll be able to start a New York City Bowl. Any questions at this point? Okay. We're going to take a break. The study sessions will start at 10 o'clock. There are 3 rooms for the sessions, and I'm going to let you know which room you should go to so that we have a fairly even number of students in each room. So Farmingdale and Roslyn, you'll be in room 141. If you go out of the room, there'll be people directing you. They're just down the hall. So Farmingdale and Roslyn will be in room 141. Plainedge, Bethpage, and Jericho will be in room 142. You know what, I think we may have to adjust this. How many people are here from Hauppauge? Let me see hands from Hauppauge again. Okay. All right, so then Our Lady of Mercy, Stony Brook, Westbury, and Hauppauge will be in room 143. Okay, let's take a break and we'll start the sessions in about 10 or 15 minutes. Thank you again for coming.